You know, he's going through this terrible time at the moment with this cancer. If you got cancer, your whole life just seems to, only thing you care about is the cancer. And it seems that the King's got it in perspective. He's looking quite cheerful. He's getting best treatment. He's got an amazing sense of humour, and it carries him through. And he once said to me, you know, if it wasn't for my sense of humour, I don't think I'd be able to cope. Yeah, I'd photographed him leaving a polo match in the late 70s, maybe 78, 79. He had this huge bald patch on the back of his head, and he hadn't bothered to comb over it because he was in a rush to get back to London. And it appeared as a splash picture the next day. So it would have been the Queen's, I think it was the Queen's Silver Jubilee. So that's the date it was anyway. And it was a massive picture, and it was the, oops, Charles, you got a patch in your thatch. And 3 days later, his policeman said, polo match at Windsor, he wants to have a word with you. I said, all right, okay. So he came up and said, are you the person that took a picture of my bald spot? I said, yes, sir. I said, have you been getting a lot of stick about it? He said, well, who saw it? I said, well, and then we were selling about 3 million papers a day. And I said, well, about 7 million people. We said, oh my God. He said, that's why everywhere I go, people was photographing the back of my head. And he was quite cheerful about it, but that was my first ever conversation with him. Since then, I've had many more. Slowly, I sort of realised that this man was special. I went on a few of his tours, and I watched him talk to these presidents in these countries where they had rainforests, begging them not to rip up this precious resource. And he gave me a very good interview about that in Brazil. And I suddenly realised this man has got a lot on his mind about the climate, you know, and this was 30 years ago. It's not like he's just come onto this. He's been absolutely caring about it. And then, of course, the Prince's Trust. Now, he started the Prince's Trust when he left the Royal Navy with his Navy pension, and he's, you know, he got a stipend. And he got in touch with Jon Snow, the broadcaster, great broadcaster, who used to run a charity for children who'd lost their way a bit. And since then, of course, the Prince's Trust, over 1 million young people have come off the scrap heap and done brilliantly well. And some of them have become millionaires, and some have become great actors, and one is a great magician. And so, you know, he's awfully proud of that. And when you go to the ceremonies every year, the award ceremonies, honestly, you're in tears listening to the way the Prince's Trust has changed these young people's lives. It's actually, and he enjoys it so much. And of course, so many people, so many actors and film stars and singers have all got involved in it. Ant and Dec, you know, big fans of the Prince's Trust. So, you know, that is an amazing thing. And not only is it now in Britain, it's everywhere. We were recently in Barbados, and it was only there 48 hours, and yet one of the things he did was visit the Prince's Trust there and talk to the young people there, and it was quite moving to see that. And slowly I changed my attitude towards it and I suddenly saw that, you know, taking pictures of this man, it could make a big difference. And I started to change the way I did the pictures. I was no longer looking for the bald spot or the pull it full in the face. I was looking for really meaningful pictures. And I remember we were in Nepal, in Kathmandu, and we went to this refuge centre for women who come back from India after being trafficked to brothels there and being rejected by their families. And the King, Prince Charles, then said to, you know, how can we help this woman, you know, to get a better place? And I said, what have you got in mind, sir? And he said, well, about if I, one of my paintings, and we do a limited edition, would some readers buy them? And I said, I'm sure they will. And he gave us this limited edition, 250 paintings of copies of a painting of Annapurna, a mountain in the Himalayas. And we could have sold 1,000. And the readers just bought them up quickly, and we raised quite a lot of money, and we helped to build this home, beautiful home in Nepal for these women. And I went out there when he opened it, and it was an amazing place. that was all down to him. And I could go on like that. I mean, once we went to Poland in Krakow, and we went to the Jewish quarter there, and they said to him, you know, we've got no place to teach our children. You know, obviously, you know, Poland was a huge Jewish population, and now it's very small. And he came back from England, and he got in touch with quite important Jewish people here, and they held 2 dinners. They raised the money. Prince Charles went to both of the dinners, and they built this beautiful home for these. It's a beautiful place, and in Krakow, and he went out there and opened it, and I went with him, and there was Holocaust survivors there, and you know, people were so overawed. You know, some people were in sort of tears. What he's done, this man, you know, and nobody seems to know about that, but I do, and I see this all the time. You know, caring how he sort of does these things without any fuss, and if he asks you to do something, he never forgets. You know, you could, you know, say, you know, would you do this? Could you do that? And you say yes, and he said, have you done anything about that yet? You know, he'd remind you. And so, you know, that was the early days, and today he's the king, and he just has risen to the occasion. I can't, you know, tell you. In fact, his speeches he's made, the speech after his mother died was wonderful. The King's speech on Christmas Day last year, not the year before last, was magnificent, got the highest viewing figure over Christmas, and this year was the same. And when you listen to his speeches, which he writes himself, he talked about putting yourself in your neighbour's shoes and be kind to each other. And before that, I was at Christmas Day at Sandringham Church, and the Duchess of York turned up, Sarah Ferguson, and it was everybody a massive story. You know, why was she there? And I was asked that, and I said, well, because the King said this in his speech. You know, he was there, and you know, Sarah's been suffering from cancer, and he was being kind to her, and she was. I tell you, it gave her such a boost. As she was leaving the church, the crowds were going crazy for her, and she was the last one to leave, and the crowds were giving her flowers, and she was just overwhelmed by it all. And it was a terrific thing he did. And you know, that's him. You know, he does things like that, and he does it with kindness. He's a very kind man, and you know, as I say, I find it a pleasure working with him. He's my favourite member of the royal family, has been for many years. You know, he's going through this terrible time at the moment with this cancer, which, you know, you always, I don't know if you do, but, you know, if you got cancer, your whole life just seems to, only thing you care about is the cancer. And but it seems that the King's got it in perspective. He's looking quite cheerful. He's getting best treatment. He's got an amazing sense of humour, and it carries him through. And he once said to me, you know, if it wasn't for my sense of humour, I don't think I'd be able to cope. He's certainly quick-witted. I think, I think the Queen probably was the funniest. Although, you know, she had a cutting way with the Queen. You know, she could put you in your place pretty quickly. But the Prince has got a great sense of humour. He laughs so much. When he's out in the crowd, when he's talking to people, he teases someone, he'll ask questions, and when he gets the answer, he'll turn it into a joke as much as he can. But he's kind, he's a really kind person too, you know. I mean, he's so lovely. Some of the stories are, you know, very personal to me, but, you know, he's been amazing, and I just hope he gets over this illness quickly. I think desperately wants to return to full-time duties. He's a man who cares, everything is to him duty, everything that's important to him. Being a good head of state is you know, he's got a hard act to follow. He's got, you know, Elizabeth the second, who was there for over 70 years, our Queen, and loved by everybody. And I think, you know, he probably doesn't think he'll ever be as popular as the Queen. But, you know, my God, I think his popularity's soared so far. He's not been in the job long, but the energy he's put into it, the way he's made these magnificent speeches to the nation, and uplifting, positive, and kind, and you know, and people are now warming to him, and you know, talking to people. I think their attitude has changed. You know, I think they think he's doing a very good job, and you know, with Camilla supporting him, I think he'll reign for a long while. He carries the heavy load as our king, but she's there to support him in every possible way, and never ever to outshine him in any way, but just be there, love him and care for him and support him, and it's lovely to see, and I must say it's a joy to see. And she's been wonderful too, Camilla. She never lost that common touch, and on every occasion he goes to the hospital, she's with him and she's there to support him, and that's it, and that's the love they have for each other, and she's, when she's asked about him, she said he's doing very well, and you've got to say, well, you know, that's good news. I tell you this story, which where Camilla was a great support. When Prince Charles returned to Mullock Moor, the west of Ireland, where great Uncle Dickie, his Lord Mountbatten, was blown up by the IRA, the picture that I needed, and everybody needed, was him looking at the scene where the explosion took place. And I was the pool photographer. As we got to the spot where the harbour was and he needed to spot, I asked him, I said, could we do a picture here, please, sir? And he said, why? And I didn't know what to say, because I thought this was a no, you know. And Camilla said, come on, darling, let's do it. And they went to and I got this amazing picture of, I say it myself, at the back view of him looking at the spot, the harbour, and there was no one else in the picture, just one policeman down at the bottom of the harbour. And I thanked him, and he said, well, you gave me no choice. And I was really upset about that. And I was thought, God, you know, I've really sort of, but I had the picture. And the following day, this picture published, I think it published 10 columns in the Sun, but all the Irish papers used it and all the Northern Ireland papers used it. And he was shown the pictures. He was shown the newspapers at breakfast the next morning by his press secretary, and said, this is why Arthur did that picture. And he said, yeah, I totally understand. You know, he realised, you know, why I'd done it. But, you know, it's not always been that pleasant. You know, I remember the early days when he gave me at Highgrove, when I caught me on his land caught me on a public footpath with a big lens on my shoulder, and he was on horseback, and he screamed at me, what are you doing on my land? And I said, I'm not on your land, I'm on a public footpath. And he said, well, public footpaths are taking pictures on, and I've not been on the Sun long, maybe a year, 18 months. I said, well, I'm just doing my job. And he said, some job? And I said, well, at least I've got a job, thinking, you know, I'm working. And he took that as an insult, of course, which if you look at it another way, it was. I didn't mean it like that. And God, he hit the horse so hard, he took off like a rocket, and steam coming out of his ears. And the following Wednesday, a policeman came up to him and said, what happened there down at Highgrove? I said, why? He said, we were all having our coffee in the room. He came screaming in and he banged the whip on the table. He said, all the coffee cups went flying. He said, you're supposed to be guarding me, and our thread was on my front lawn. So it wasn't always great, but you know, those times have changed now, and I really love working with him.